All right, let's talk about the field of candidates vying to become the 2024 Republican presidential nominee. It is growing. Former Vice President Mike Pence and former New Jersey Governor Christie are the newest challengers, throwing their hats into the ring. Pence's campaign released a political ad this morning taking aim at President Biden.
Our country's in a lot of trouble. President Joe Biden and the radical left have weakened America at home and abroad. The American dream is being crushed under runaway inflation. Wages are dropping. Recession is looming. Our southern border is under siege, and the enemies of freedom are on the march around the world. And worse still, timeless American values are under assault as never before.
Pence kicks off his campaign today in Des Moines, Iowa, and CBS News political correspondent Caitlin Huey-Burns is following the latest on this for us. She's joining us now. Hey, Caitlin, it's good to see you. So Pence mentions God and faith a number of times in this ad. I suppose it's no surprise. After all, evangelicals are an important portion of the Republican base, but more specifically in Iowa.
Yeah, good to be with you. We're here in New Hampshire, where we've been covering Christie, who got into the race last night, and now Pence is now joining the race today, which shows how big this field is expanding just this week. And what was really notable, Anne-Marie, about Pence's announcement video is that you will find no trace of Donald Trump, his former boss, the president under which he served as vice president. And so you have a really, notable moment here where you have a former vice president running against his former running mate, someone he ran with twice in 2016 and 2020. Of course, we all know what happened in terms of their parting of ways. The former president, of course, upset with Mike Pence for how he handled January 6th. What's interesting about Pence, though, is he's very much going to focus his campaign on Iowa, evangelical voters in particularly because he's focusing on kind of this religious conservatism. And if you listen to his speeches and interviews that he's done, we sat down with him recently as well. He talks about a much more conservative Republican Party, hearkening back to kind of the era before Donald Trump, which of course is remarkable because he served in the Trump administration. But he talks about cultural conservatism. He has really leaned into the anti-abortion fight. He's also talked about a more hawkish foreign policy around the world. So we'll see whether that has enough appeal. The challenge for him, of course, is going to be trying to get over this hurdle that is the Trump base that is still very much upset with him over January 6th.
All right, so let's talk about where you are and the candidate that is declared where you are, Christie. He's officially announced that he's trying to get to the White House. The thing about him is he had been a long-standing Trump ally, really, until the last election when Trump was denying that he had lost the election. That's the only time that he split with him. What is he going to try to do here? Where does he see his lane where does he see his lane is? Sorry, my grammar's all over the place today, but I think I know what you know what I'm trying to ask.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, Anne-Marie. Well, Christie, as you noted, was a former ally of former President Trump. He ran himself in 2016, really did terribly in Iowa and here in New Hampshire, dropped out, endorsed Trump, advised him through the campaign, helped prep him for debates, and then for a time led the transition team into the presidency. Now he is running as the toughest Trump critic in the race. He talked about that kind of evolution last night when he addressed a town hall here in New Hampshire, and that's really what we're going to see from this campaign. Kind of a laser focus on places like New Hampshire where you can, kind of talk to independent voters. At the event last night where we were covering him, I talked to several voters who identified themselves as independent. They said that they were, looking around the field, but that they knew that they wanted someone other than Donald Trump. So, he could try to appeal here, but really he's staking out a claim in this race as someone who is unafraid to go after Donald Trump and do so pretty fiercely. I mean, last night he said that Donald Trump is just power hungry. He's in it for himself. He, accused him of all sorts of things. And really, he said he wants to tell it like it is at a time where these other candidates vying for the nomination are trying to thread that needle, not really criticizing Trump for fear of alienating the base, but also trying to show contrast. So tricky environment for everyone. We'll see whether Christie can pull it off.
Yeah, and you know what I thought about, like taking on that position is, that's fine, but it's not just Trump that you have to get past. You have to get past Governor Ron DeSantis too. And a lot of these candidates, whether they're being overt or subtle, are targeting Trump. But Ron DeSantis is polling quite well, obviously. So do either Pence or Christie have a chance against Trump or Ron DeSantis?
Well, as Christie said last night, the reason that he's going after Trump so hard is because he's the front runner. He joked, who am I going to go after? Nikki Haley? Of course I'm going to go after Trump. But you bring a really interesting point, which is that Donald Trump himself, as all these other candidates are getting into the race, he's still keeping his focus on Ron DeSantis. Nearly every day you hear another hit from Trump to Ron DeSantis, who appears, at least at this point, to be polling, at least, as the most viable alternative to Trump, but still has a lot to prove out on the campaign trail. And you have started to see some of these candidates take swipes at Ron DeSantis, and not as much as Donald Trump. You've heard Haley go after him. Christie even had some choice words for DeSantis last night. A lot of the candidates have been, critical of how he's been handling his fight with Disney. So that could be something that we see potentially tuned up on the debate stage, which brings me to another point, which is that is kind of all Christie is really focused on, is getting to that debate stage to try to really go toe-to-toe with Donald Trump and take him down. That could also give some of these other candidates some political cover and let Christie kind of take the hits there.
Yeah, it is early days, and we have seen that a good performance on the campaign stage, at least for, 24, 48 hours, can give a candidate a boost. Caitlin, thank you very much.